Welcome to a special episode of Total Space. Today we have guests from What About It? We have Felix and Steffi. I'm Mikko, and we have also other hosts here.
I'm AnotherSpaceNut
And I'm Rich L-B.
and welcome to the show, Felix and Stefanie. Would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers?
Ladies first.
Hi, I'm Stefanie, the wife behind the scenes from What About It, and soon starting a new show on my own.
And my name is Felix. I'm the host of What About It YouTube channel. Some of you folks might even know the channel. It's right now mainly about SpaceX and Starship production because that's the beating heart of the space industry right now.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming on today, guys. So I figured we'd touch on a little bit about what it takes to turn, for some, a hobby in watching Starship into a career like you guys have managed to.
Yeah, we started the channel 1.5 years ago. And the initial goal was much, much lower than what we have right now. And it's a humbling experience to see so many people watch the episodes we produce every twice a week, actually. And it was originally planned as a hobby, as you say. And now it's turned into a full-time job. So that's the one thing that we do. And it's quite the ride, actually.
If I may, Felix, what inspired you to start What About It as a channel?
That started when I was about 5 years old. I was interested in space far before I started the channel. And when it came to the point where I wasn't really happy with the job I did before. I was a sales rep in the field, and I was responsible for big companies, for key accounts. That's what they were called in the business. And I was able to do the job, and I did well, but I never really enjoyed it. I did my first job in the media business when I was, I think, 18 years old. And that was for a radio station. And then I worked for another radio station. I worked for book publishers and stuff like that. So there was always the media aspect in my life. And then, of course, there was the hobby astronomer and the rocket nerd and the space geek. And I just combined the two. I was not really happy with the job I did, even though I earned enough money to support the family and everything was fine. Something was missing in my life. And so we decided to jump out of the plane and see where the ride goes. And it actually worked out. And I'm super glad and happy about that, how the channel is evolving. It's far surpassed anything we expected when we started this. So it's a lucky thing that we did it. And that's how it came about, basically. When I sat down and I thought I could do a YouTube channel. And then I thought I could do it about space. I know a lot of stuff about space. And and then it took me 3 months of researching how to do it. And then my wife threatened me to record the first episode. And I did it. And it was a very, very curious experience. But that's how it all started, basically.
Yeah, we talked about it first, I think 3-4 years before you actually started, that you should just do a YouTube channel. And then it took some years till we got serious about it.
Also, if I may, kind of like the same question, but for you, Steffi, in terms of, we've seen a few episodes now of your show, Wonders of the Universe, and we've seen quite a few, actually. And can I ask, what inspired you to start that show?
Well, I always wanted to teach people, basically. When I learned my job and how to do it, I always wanted to, go on and teach kids or teenagers or grown-ups, I didn't really know. And, kind of inspire them or help them and give them something for their life, basically. And when Felix started his show, I was setting up my practice for couples and families, basically. And I was thinking about doing a YouTube show about that. And then Felix started, and I got involved pretty quickly in that show and how to set up a video and what it takes to produce a video. And then I was thinking about, well, I'm interested in space and I'm hanging out with you guys every day. So why not make it space then? And that was the idea behind it, because I wanted to work again, to do something productive, basically.
And with that in mind, do you have any advice for any would-be content creators, anybody that is looking at Starship, maybe watching your videos, listening to this podcast, that do think, I want to take that jump, but should I?
Yes, that's my advice. start recording. There's always I've talked to quite a few people by now actually that want to start a YouTube channel, or as you just did, a podcast. They're always the same questions. Do I need better equipment, or how do I prepare for this, or I don't know how to do this, so I need to learn it first. Throw all of that out the window and start recording. That's the best thing you can do, because you learn while doing it and you improve. And if you look at really, really famous YouTubers and you look at their first upload, you'll see that they didn't know anything either when they started. So that's the best moment to start it is 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, maybe tell people about it, like your partner, friends, and if you talk about it long enough, maybe they get annoyed and be like, come on, now it's recording. Same with Felix. I dragged him in front of the camera, and when I wanted to do my first video, I was like, yeah, now is not a good time, and the kids are sick or whatever. And then he was like, okay, you go upstairs now and do it, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, off the back of that, you and I had a conversation around 16 months ago, Felix, where I said I wanted to start a brand and I wasn't too sure of how to do that.
Yeah, I remember that.
You have been a big support, and you know, I've asked you a lot of advice in setting Total Space up with the guys. My thoughts on that are, you know, as clear as you said, you should start recording yesterday. You should start uploading this morning.
Exactly. So, yeah. It's always the same question as well. It's when do I start and how do I do this? It's just start, do it.
And don't be worried so much. I mean, we have 3 kids and they stumble into the recordings or live streams. I mean,
The live streams.
you've seen it. So there has to be stuff that it has to go wrong, or if it's wrong, but there's always something, and it's okay. It's even fun for people that are watching or listening in, and it's live, and that is nice.
Yeah, if you want to find excuses for not doing it, you will always find one. And that's the problem. You shouldn't look for excuses for waiting a little longer. You should find reasons for why you should start now.
Yeah, exactly. I had maybe a couple of hours warning before we recorded the first episode with SpaceNut about drone ships. That was a bit awkward at first, but it was fun.
Yeah, there you go.
Couple of hours, that's you being modest, Mikko. It was less than an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. So, Felix, how do you feel about your core staff members doing their own show?
Oh, I'm so happy. Like AnotherSpaceNut just said, he approached me with this idea all the way in the beginning, actually. It didn't take him too long to tell me that he wants to do something like this as well. And the first thing I said is do it now. Do you need any help? How can I help you? So I'm super happy to be here today. It's an honor to help you, to be a guest on the show. And if there's anything you need help with in the future, approach me. I'm super happy that you're doing this. It's very, very interesting. I've listened to every episode you've put out, and it's a really, really cool project.
Thanks. We probably need it.
Yeah.
So, Steffi, how has your life changed after Felix started What About It?
That is a good one. It's basically for all of you out there that have children, it's like the birth of the first kid, because your whole world changes. It was basically, especially the first 4 months, I think it was, when Felix did it all on his own. He was in his room sitting there and researching, recording, editing, and all that all by himself. And I was the housewife with the kids, having a couple coming in here and there. And it was pretty awkward. And then I started to get involved, basically. And then I was drawn into that whole space thing and editing thing and production thing. And I never did anything like that before in my whole life. So, yeah. And how we talk to the kids as well, because they know we are working from home and there's a kid coming. So, yeah, it changed a lot, and I'll be back.
You heard it from her. It changed quite a few things in our life. That's for sure. It's a very special job to do.
And we are all glad you started What About It.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad to have been a part of the journey along the way with you, Felix. Really, it's been an honor and a pleasure to do some of the stuff I've been doing at What About It with you guys.
I was about to say, as I say on every episode, all the way in the end, the team is a very, very important part. And the team that formed around What About It is absolutely brilliant. And all of you are somehow part of this team. So thank you for helping me. Thank you for filling in the blanks where I couldn't possibly do everything. Like Steffi said, in the beginning when I did everything on my own, I worked 80 hours plus a week. And that's where the team comes in to actually give me my private life back. And you guys are doing an awesome job with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
To touch on Starship a little bit, because I think whenever anybody's thinking about space news and content creators within space, the one thing that I commonly hear is, what about it? Is there every time with every update? You know, does that almost become like a compulsion? Do you find that some nights you've maybe not slept as well because you're fearful that you might miss out on Starship news, or are you able to just switch off?
Oh, in the beginning, when I started the channel, I actually couldn't sleep at all after a while because the whole thing kept me so busy. What I still need to do for the next episode, and if there's anything missing, or if I researched everything correctly, or dissected specific topics, because it can go into crazy details when you start with something something specific that you want to explain. The rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper. And at some point you have to stop. And I had to actually learn that over time. So in the beginning I had trouble stopping. I worked at night. I worked 3 a.m. I got up 6 a.m. and started working again. Because it was so important to me too, that to have everything 110%, you know. And after a while that becomes more and more relaxed. Because first of all, there are many, many, many things that I do not have to research anymore. How to produce an episode, how to record, how to edit, I'm employing an editor by now who's doing an absolutely fantastic job, by the way. And so that's all the stuff that has gone away by now. But in the beginning it was really, really hard. But now it's better. I found a rhythm, but it took a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing, like the whole time management thing that we have really a very straight structure now, and the kids know it and we know it, and yeah, that there are certain times where you're not allowed basically to ring the doorbell because Felix is recording, so that they know they have to be silent. But it works very, very good.
Yeah, the time management is a very, very important thing. That's another good tip for those who think about doing it on their own, starting their own channel or podcast or whatever. The more the project grows, the more stuff there is to do. So you should draw lines, basically, because there's always another comment that you can answer, or another tweet that you can send out, or another topic that you can research, but it doesn't fit into one day. So yeah, draw your boundaries, draw your lines, and find the time where you can turn off and relax. It's very important.
The No Space Talk channel we actually have in our Discord channel, because especially in the beginning, I think we haven't used it for a long while now. But in the beginning, when we didn't know how to really do it, it was very important that Felix wanted to talk to all the people on the Discord, but his brain was thinking about space basically all the time, and that's never good for the poor brain to just keep go in with one topic. And so we went in there every now and then when we wanted to talk to people.
I remember making that channel.
Yeah. So don't burn out. If you don't feel like it, just talk about it, say it, and be like, okay, we can talk about our hobbies or whatever, but please no space talk today, or whatever topic you choose.
Yeah, there's this when it comes to content creators, there's always the discussion about burnout syndrome on YouTubers especially, and that is a real thing. It is a real thing. The problem really is that there is always something to do. So you could constantly be working, but it's not a good thing to do.
Is there anything that you guys prefer to do as a hobby or downtime task that would help reduce the likelihood of you getting burnout on starships?
It's family. It's the family. We have 3 kids, and it's a lot of fun to spend time with them. And then, of course, I had so many nice hobbies before I started the YouTube channel. I'm a paramotor pilot, and I'm a hobby astronomer, and I like driving fast cars and all that kind of stuff. But there is not that much time when you're a full-time content creator. So the one thing that keeps me going right now, which makes me relax and be happy when I'm not in front of the camera is the family, definitely.
And leaving the house. There's one thing. When Felix gets a special look in his face, it's time to just leave the house because we're here all the time. And then we just get out, leave the work and everything behind, and just do something nice in the woods or in a museum or what.
Yeah.
Or just taking a drive in the Tesla for some donuts.
Exactly. Or
Exactly.
McDonald's.
Exactly. Just go walk in the woods, or we visit a lot of museums with the kids and stuff like that. So it is when you're a content creator on a full-time basis, it is really important to find time where you can actually relax and not think about what you're doing for a living.
Do you find when you're out and about at these museums, you do get people come up and say, "Hey, you're Felix, the guy that does Starship news"?
Yeah, there's this funny little story about us being on vacation in southern Germany. We went to Zugspitze. That is the highest mountain in Germany in the Alps. And I was playing around with my daughter in the snow, and then somebody approached Steffi. Maybe you can continue the story from here on.
Yeah, it was Felix wore his NASA jacket. And then he went to climb up the hill with Helena because the boys didn't want to go into the snow any further. And then he looked at me and said, "Oh, he's a space fan." And I was like, "Yeah, he even has a YouTube channel." And he was like, "Oh, his name doesn't happen to be Felix from What About It?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's him. That's crazy." Yeah, that was him.
So it even happens on the highest mountains. It happens everywhere. Yeah. It was crazy when I visited Florida. I went to the merchandise store in the Kennedy Space Center, the visitor complex, and there were quite a few people approaching me. And when it happened the first time, it was a really, really strange feeling for me that somebody approaches me and knows my name, even though I have never seen the person before. But I'm getting used to it. As with everything, you're getting used to it, and then it's a really, really nice thing. I've done meetups with fans before too, which were absolutely awesome. If we didn't have COVID going on, I would have done meetups this year. But yeah, it's always nice to meet the people who watch the episodes, definitely.
Or as to say with his nephew's words, they have an almost popular uncle now, almost famous uncle.
Almost famous.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a chat after you release an episode on the voice channels.
Yeah, it's very important for me too. I love the community going on the Discord, and how many nice people surround this channel sometimes is unbelievable to me. I find myself approaching Steffi, looking at her and being like, is this really happening? Almost on a daily basis, because it's so much fun and it's a heck of a ride. It's really, really something that I would have never expected for our life, basically.
I always answer something around the lines like, I don't think so. It can't be.
Yeah.
Nice. So, Steffi, what are your plans about your new show?
Oh, yeah, exactly. The new show. The plan is to start with, spoiler alert, with an episode that Felix and I do end of December on What About It. And basically in January, I want to start to create 2 videos per month in the beginning. Maybe an interview every now and then. Yeah, and then I talk about everything else going on in space and how it affects us here on Earth, basically.
That sounds great. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, same here. To make it.
So, Steffi, how was your first episode, the recording of it? Were you scared?
I was so scared. As I said, Felix had to drag me up basically to start the set and be like, okay, and now you can record. I even started the recording of the camera and the microphone already, just talk. Yeah, and it was really crazy. I tend to laugh a lot and I get a really high voice when I'm excited. And I think that was, yeah, you can hear it in the episode. And I as always in the beginning, if a lot of people or me as well start something new, I don't really know how to behave in front of the camera or who I am in front of the camera or in the show. So I think you can see it in the first episodes that my personality in front of the camera is slightly different, because the first time I was super excited. The second time was not so much excited anymore, but the third time was super excited again. So yeah, it shows in front of the camera.
Yeah, and you have nice setups with your lamps and rocks.
I'll keep the lamp though.
So expand more about What About It and the overall goal, because you said, Felix, that initially you envisioned What About It to be something that it became something different. Is there a future picture you've got in mind for what you'd like What About It to be? Or, I know Steph is the creative brains of the branding. Is there any future vision that you guys have got of What About It that you'd like to share with us today?
My future vision that I always say is to enjoy it as long as it lasts, because I've said it a few times now. It's a crazy ride, and I actually don't know where this is going to lead. I try to improve everything that I can improve, and I think that shows on every episode. So we constantly improve on audio, on picture quality, on animations, on editing, on everything we can. Basically, it's an always evolving organism, so to say, but where it actually goes is hard to say for me. Maybe my wife has a better picture in her head.
Well, you always love to do these in-depth episodes, these mini documentaries, and I really love them so much because I think you always find the right words to explain all the mysteries out there to me and the kids and a lot of other people you talk to. So I think that would be something that would perfectly fit into your channel.
Yeah, but for that, SpaceX needs to slow down first.
Sure.
With SpaceX in mind, and you're saying SpaceX needs to slow down, are you planning to be on the ground more in the States at SpaceX locations, trying to aggressively get interviews, good video footage and photos and the like? Is that something that you plan to do more for the channel? More for What About It?
Well, it's a long distance travel, so it'll never be me replacing Boca Chica Gal or anything, because for that you would need to be there every day. But I was actually planning to go to the United States twice this year, but it only happened once right before the corona pandemic hit. And we were lucky to be able to get out of the country again, because it was right at the point where it started. Right now, it's that ridiculously popular virus that's going around that keeps me from doing anything. I've been invited by all sorts of different companies involved in the space industry, like Copenhagen Suborbitals, Skyrora. Arca Space has invited me to Romania, which is super interesting as well. I want to do interviews with ESA Aerospace here in Germany, and so on and so forth. I have talks with ESA to visit their facilities, all that kind of stuff. And of course, United States is in it as well. But right now, traveling is really, really hard to do. So we'll have to wait for that until we have a vaccine, which is hopefully going to happen next year. And then I'll draw new plans probably. But yeah, I want to do as many journeys for the channel as I possibly can. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and especially the Felix goes around the moon in the Starship. I'm so looking forward to see that.
Yes, yes, please.
Aizawa, Felix, and I artists.
Yeah, well, I would fit in there. So maybe if we suggest it to Elon, maybe he takes me with him. I would definitely do the trip, that's for sure.
It'd be great if you'd be able to live stream something like that as well. I'm not sure exactly how it would work, but I don't know if there's network connectivity on the actual vehicle itself, whether they connect to some Starlink sites or satellites or something. But it would be nice to be able to see a live stream of you going
Yes, most definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
Or just a time lapse for a show intro. So you've been launched around the moon, landing back on Earth, holding over 30 seconds to introduce your shows with.
Yeah, it would be actually the journey to the moon would be all the way on top of all the destinations that I would love to go to. Of course, lowest orbit, I would take that as well. But if it can happen, that would be the thing I wanted to do, definitely. And maybe we can with starships in the future. Everything's open.
Yeah, maybe we'll have a What About It Starship at some point.
Oh, our own starship. That would be something.
I do think the future of What About It could really be a big new show when we are on Mars and other places.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to as well. Fingers crossed it works out. because if it does, we are in for a lot of spectacular things in the future. Definitely. And I'll be talking about it. I'll make sure of that.
Yeah, and I would even go to Mars and make sure that you've got a first person there to talk to.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
It's an old argument in our marriage that she wants to go to Mars. I'm whenever I'm asked in interviews or on live streams or whatever, people ask me if I would go to Mars. I always reply that I wouldn't because I have family. And then she says I would, and I always say no, you don't.
It's in the background with all the moderators and stuff. I a lot of times say into the chat, but I would.
So, Felix, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Total Space Network yet, but we have 3 shows so far, and that is Talking Space, which has now become the Space Update, and we have Deep Dive, which Mikko does a great job on, and then we have the show that I'm currently in the middle with AnotherSpaceNut rebooting, becoming multiplanetary. What do you think of those 3 topics? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I think that's a good concept. I had a similar concept to that on my channel in the beginning. I did normal episodes. They were called the Space News and they're still in the Space News playlist on the channel. And then I did another format which was called In Depth. So it's basically it's even almost the same name. So it was What About It In Depth, and that was about a single topic, trying to dissect as much as I can and explain as much as I can. That's what Steffi referred to earlier, the mini documentaries. So right now, SpaceX is going so crazy that the space news, the Starship updates have taken over completely right now, which is going to change in the future again because it can't be, well, never say never, but I hope it's going to slow down at some point. And then it's going to change again. So I think it's always a good thing to have different formats. And especially when you're so creative as you guys are, you're pumping out content like crazy right now. And then that's always good to just keep doing exactly that. Because when you're creative and you have the power and feel the drive to do it. Do it as much as you can, basically. It's really nice what you're doing.
Well, thank you. It feels good to have other creators say, you know, what you are doing is good. Like, we've just been trying to go with the flow, and I mean, ultimately, Total Space is about bringing content for your enjoyment as the space nerd, as the space nut. You know, if we're not producing content, then we need to be looking at ourselves and wondering why. Like you say, with this early creative flow that we've got going on, I feel Total Space is, although we're the new kid on the block in terms of space brands, in terms of podcasting especially, I'm really hoping that people are enjoying the content, and it's really important that, especially people like yourself, because you are first and foremost a space nut. There's no two ways about it. You start a space brand after watching space content. And so for you to come back at us and say, the content and the format that you're doing it in is really good, that's, it feels really validating. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're already there as such. You've got I think it's something like over 110,000 subscribers now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and for you to come here and say, we're actually listening to you guys' show and it's really enjoyable. We've got it on in the living room. That means a lot to all of us that produce this.
Like I said, you're very, very welcome. Steffi actually started the first podcast. I didn't have the time before, as always, to listen in, and Mikko actually, I think he even sent me a link to the podcast that you already had produced, and I didn't listen to it because I didn't have the time, and then I was working in the living room, and my wife just turned it on in the background, and I was like, huh, what's that? Oh, I know those voices. And then I kept listening for the next, hour or so, and I every 5 minutes or so, I said, that is really interesting stuff. So yeah, you're doing a good job. It's definitely entertaining, and it's you learn something from it, and it is entertaining. And I think that's the two main goals that any content about space should fulfill, and that's what you're doing. So you're on the right track, definitely.
Thanks, that's great to hear.
I'd actually like to take this opportunity to do a role reversal here and just turn around and say, Felix, you rock.
Thank you.
With that in mind, so progression of a Starship. You are Mr. Starship News. how does it feel being able to look back 18 months ago and say, hey, SpaceX on a day here in Texas? And now to say SpaceX have got the orbital launch building facility in Texas. You've been along that journey in such an incredible, fast-paced way that, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on how you feel the Starship did progress and, how you as a person felt knowing that actually this crazy billionaire building stainless steel rockets out in the desert is taking us to Mars.
Yeah, it's a unique thing that's happening in Texas right now at the South Texas launch site. That's the official name that SpaceX has put out there, and by now it has like 20 or 30 different names circulating around in the space enthusiast scene. My channel started with all sorts of different topics. I've had Roscosmos, I had Rocket Labs, I even did interview with Peter Beck and Robert Zubrin from the Mars Society, and I had all sorts of different topics. Right now, that is condensed down to the Starship updates because there is so much happening there, and the implications are so large. Starships are not just rockets, and that's what most people need to understand when they're looking at this. Because it's never happened before, it's easy to confuse it with just a large rocket, but it actually isn't. It's more like a car or a bus or a semi-truck or something with rocket engines under it. It's not an upper stage pushing a payload into orbit. It's a vehicle in the very sense of the name, in the very meaning of the word, basically. What's happening down there, and I have my fingers crossed that they succeed. It started very, very slow around 2 years ago, I think, when they started building that dirt hill at the coast down there. And then they developed the Star Hopper and made it fly a little bit. That was all just very crude and rudimentary stuff that they did. And they've by now reached a point where it starts to dwarf other launch providers' facilities at the Kennedy Space Center. They have this huge high bay that they are building. They have tons of manufacturing tents. They pump out prototypes every week or so right now. It's pretty amazing what they're doing there. It's hard to tell where this is going to lead. If Musk is actually able to, he has this plan of sending many, many starships to Mars. The numbers go between 100 and 1,000. I've had that on an episode before that if they had built starships at the same speed they are building Falcon 9 boosters right now, it would take them 100 and something years to build 1,000 starships. So he'll have to do something special in Boca Chica. Yeah, it's incredible to see it unfold more and more and become more and more professional, basically.
I mean, Elon did say at the Mars Society Convention 2020 that he was worried about the rate of innovation. That was the bottleneck. And I think the Starship program shows his determination to increase that.
Yeah, it's purely about innovation everywhere, everything. There's a new rocket engine. The whole design is completely new. The way it's going to re-enter the atmosphere is really completely new. The whole concept of a 100% reusable rocket is completely new. So almost everything about the whole idea of Starship is completely new. Yeah. So it's pure innovation, basically. It's something other launch providers wouldn't even dare to do because there's too many companies involved and too many politics and all that kind of stuff. So that is, if you compare it to Artemis, for example, that NASA is doing right now, which is a traditional rocket. SLS is not a bad rocket at all. It's just innovation-wise, it's basically large space shuttle without the shuttle, basically. It's even using the same parts, largely. So the Starship is a different thing, that's for sure.
On the first episode of Becoming Multiplanetary, we actually talked a bit about Artemis, and one of my opinions on Artemis was that when you take parts from the old shuttle program, you also inherit their technical debt. You know, when you're trying to engineer something and you have to engineer around old parts, that increases the cost. It's actually one of the things I brought up during that episode.
Yeah, and it's true. It's definitely true. You can see it with the boosters right now, that the development takes so long to just add another segment on top, because that's basically all they did with the boosters. But they've been developing on them for, 5 years now? Which is insanely long, if considering that it's just another segment on top of the same booster, basically. So, yeah. Sometimes that can introduce more problems than it solves. Yeah, Artemis.
Orange rocket good.
Well, like I said, it's not a bad rocket, and it'll be absolutely impressive to see it fly, but it's not a step forward, in my opinion. Even if it brings us to the moon, which is doubtful right now, actually. But even if it does that, it's not going to really be a step forward, in my opinion. It costs a lot of money, and a bit more innovation would have been good, definitely.
You can't use 60-year-old hardware in the name of innovation and technological advancement.
Yeah, bluntly said, yeah.
I mean, we have spoken about the SLS rocket on a few of the shows here at Total Space. You know, we're not necessarily against it. Like, ultimately, the more horses you've got in a race, the more enjoyable that race is.
Yep, totally agree, 100%. The more, the better.
You know, and really that team space vibe that a lot of people like to focus on. You know, they should be spending less time focusing on what the orange rocket can't do, and more on what it means to have more than one rocket launching humans to low Earth orbit and beyond.
It might be the only rocket that actually flies humans to moon within 5 years.
Yep, it's true. And it's always, the more projects you have running, the more lessons you will learn as well. Even if it's lessons on how not to do something, it's still a lesson learned. So it's never bad to have that.
So, based on your statement, Mikko, can I surmise that you believe that the lunar variant Starship will probably not be ready by that time?
Nope. I think Lunar Starship will be ready by that time, but NASA may not want to use it.
This is true, yeah, because they do have the contracts out to a few people, don't they?
I mean, I was reading an article just a little while before recording today that confirmed that SpaceX planned multiple moon landings before the Artemis, but that's likely robotic starships.
Yeah, that's probably true. I also read about the same thing, and I think Dynetics and Blue Origin, or the national team, would only land once.
Yep, I read that too.
So is there anything we'd like to wrap the show up with, folks?
Did we have any questions for Felix?
So, actually, we did have one question, field marshaled from Twitter, from an Elaine Hackstaff. The question reads, word for word, when will SpaceLink integrate their laser satellite crosslinks, and are there any plans for lasercom with Earth-based portals? I think the person meant Starlink, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I think he meant Starlink. I wouldn't be up to date on that topic, though. I know that they've had trouble in the beginning, that they wanted to have the laser communication in there in the beginning, and I think they've already launched a few satellites that have the laser links installed for testing, but I think they are not further than that. Is that correct?
I think they actually did the testing a couple of months back already, and I think maybe 3 launches ago they already announced that all future satellites will have interlinked laser connections.
There you go, perfect. Very nice, we were able to answer it.
Just to touch on this question a little bit more, if the question listener was interested in learning more about this technology, the International Space Station did develop the Opal system with Jet Propulsion Laboratories. That's laser communications between the International Space Station and Earth. It's widely publicised, and I'll leave something linked under today's episode.
Great. About Starlink, also, yeah, of course, there will be lower latencies when going from continent to continent. Then there's the option of having fast internet connection on ships, airplanes, and also on the poles at some point. I would hope so.
Yeah, but the poles will have the problem with the orbits, right? There are no orbits reaching that up. Don't you even have this problem where you live, I think?
Yeah, they don't really reach here, but I think they could do a polar launch.
Yep, they will. I'm pretty sure they will at some point, but right now it's all about getting the system to work, getting the beta test through, and then start earning money with it, because that's what it comes down to, I guess.
Yeah, that would probably be like a year or 2 from now, but eventually.
Yeah, imagine when starships fly Starlink satellites up there with like 400 of them in one flight. That's going to be insane to see.
Yeah, totally. And one Starship could probably deploy a whole Starlink system around the moon.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a question from Maria Pointer. Hello from first neighbor, Boca Chica Maria. Wow, Felix is the guy to explain and cover the details, but I have wondered the European view of corporations keeping pace with SpaceX. Is there competition ramping up, and where globally? Can SpaceX hold this marketing advantage? For how long?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you, Maria, for asking the question. I'm a big fan of your work, and I've met her personally. She's a really, really nice gal, and I'll make sure to meet her again when I go back to Boca Chica. It's a good question too. Obviously, right now, everybody, and I really mean everybody, is behind SpaceX in what they're doing. They are landing orbital rocket boosters. They are building the largest satellite communication network ever even imagined by anybody. They are sending astronauts to the ISS. They are doing all of it, basically. It's amazing. And their lead is amazing as well. If Starship actually works out, if it passes the prototype phase and goes into service the way SpaceX imagines it right now, their lead is going to be greatly extended again. And it's going to be really, really hard for anybody to keep up with that. There are a few projects right now, and they are all over the world. ESA is working on a reusable launcher system after Ariane. It's probably going to be called Ariane Next. Roscosmos recently announced they are working on something similar to Falcon 9. Link Space is working on a reusable rocket in China. All those projects, though, are copies of Falcon 9, of the idea that is the basis of the Falcon 9 rocket. In my opinion, that's not a bad thing to do, because if that wouldn't be allowed in engineering, we would all be driving a Mercedes, and we would all be very, very limited by the companies that make our favorite stuff. It's a good thing to copy, in my opinion. If somebody has a good idea, copy it, because that's the only thing you can do, basically. You do not have to reinvent the wheel, basically. And that's the same with the Falcon 9 rocket. So it's a nice thing that Roscosmos, Link Space, and ESA or Arianespace actually, are trying to copy the Falcon 9 rocket. But as said in the beginning, if Starship actually works out, the Falcon 9 will be outdated. Because Starship is far cheaper, far faster in turnaround, much more capable. It's better in every regard. Even launch cost is around 10% of the launch cost of a or not 10%, but 60% lower than a Falcon 9 launch, and maybe even further down the line. So yeah, basically it's going to be really, really hard for everybody else if SpaceX actually makes the Starships fly, and it'll give them a lead of at least 10 years or so, in my opinion. It's going to be hard for everybody else, but that doesn't mean they should give up. It doesn't also, like I already said, it doesn't mean they shouldn't copy SpaceX, because that's what you do. When somebody has a brilliant idea, you copy it, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah, so SpaceX is in the lead, and SpaceX is making that lead bigger as we speak here on the podcast. And I would give an advice to those who do not have a plan yet to copy SpaceX. They should better get going, because if they don't, or even come up with something better, which is really hard in my opinion, it'll be a dark future once Starship flies, because they are going to be cheaper than anybody, and they're going to be faster, and they will be able to get 100 tons payload into space with a single flight.
So thanks for listening in today, guys. I've been Another Space Nut, along with my co-host and today's guest, Felix and Steffi.
And I've been Mikko. It was nice to have you, Felix and Steffi, and you are welcome to come back.
And I've been Rich L-B, co-host of the Becoming Multiplanetary series on Total Space. It was absolutely wonderful having them here and getting the chance to talk to them. And as Mikko says, you are welcome back anytime.
Thank you for having me, and keep going with your show. I really love it, and I have it always running in the living room as soon as you're releasing a new episode. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you very, very much for having me. It was a pleasure to be on your podcast, and I'll gladly accept any future invitations if you want to have me over again. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Felix. Have a wonderful day.